All right, so yeah, thanks Tracy for introducing me. So as Tracy mentioned, I'm Amanda with ACA. So thanks to everyone for joining us tonight, taking time out of your night. Um, I hope everyone had a good Easter, and as Tracy mentioned, I hope you're looking forward to getting and raising your chicks as they're scheduled to arrive next week. And as Tracy indicated, we're going to chat about raising pheasants. And like I said, I hope this to be interactive and new and returning members. I hope you guys can provide input and feedback on your experiences, given the fact that you obviously have or will be raising your birds. So I think that would be great. And why isn't it moving forward? Okay, sorry about that. So to start off, I just thought it would be interesting to give some general information on pheasants. So as some of you are probably aware, pheasants are native to Asia, which basically means they are originally from there. And just some background information on pheasants, there's about 30 different species of pheasants. And in my opinion, most, if not all, have striking colorings, such as these pheasants shown on the slide here. So as an example, if you look on the picture on the left, it's called a golden pheasant, and you can tell by its coloring, it kind of has that striking red and gold coloring, and they're located or found in the forests and mountainous areas of Western China. Whereas if you kind of look at the silver pheasant pictured in the upper right, it has that nice long tail, and it's actually found again from the forests, mainly in the mountains of mainland Southeast Asia, as well as in eastern and southern China. And then the pheasant located in the bottom right hand there, you can see it's got that nice long tail, and again, it's located from the forests in central and eastern China. So in my opinion, there's some definitely beautiful pheasants out there. So just skipping ahead, so this is obviously a photo of the Chinese ringneck pheasant, and this is obviously the one that you guys will be getting and raising next week. So again, it's native, or it occurs naturally from China and East Asia, as well as it's been introduced in many parts of the world, including Great Britain, the US, as well as Canada. So some just fun facts about the Chinese ringneck pheasant. It's considered to be one of the most popular breeds, and it's used primarily for stalking and hunting. And as you guys all know, it has a excellent flying ability as well. It's got those brilliant colors on it. And here in Alberta, it was first introduced in 1908 near Strathmore, Alberta. So just skipping ahead. So for those who may not be aware, where do we actually get our chicks from? We actually get them from McFarland Pheasants, which is a hatchery located in Janesville, Wisconsin. So McFarland Pheasants is a well-known hatchery, and they've been in the game bird business since 1929, and they've grown to be the largest pheasant producer in North America. So they're obviously extremely experienced and knowledgeable. And in addition to that, they maintain their own breeding flocks of pheasants, as well as some interesting facts. I think back in 2018, I realized that was a few years ago now, but I think they estimated they produced about 1.8 million day-old chicks. So given that that's 4 years ago, I suspect they produce a similar amount today, but probably even more so. So that's a lot of day-old chicks that they're producing. And McFarland Pheasants also ships across many parts of the world, actually. They ship day-old pheasants throughout the US, Canada, and even into Europe and the Middle East. And finally, they do keep some pheasants on hand. I think around 500,000, but probably more so now, maybe to be raised to maturity on their own farm. So they definitely, like I said, have a lot of experience and knowledge in this business. So as you guys know, you'll be receiving your pheasants soon, and the delivery of the chicks, of getting them from the hatchery to us, is definitely no small feat. It's definitely a long and stressful journey for them. So the chicks leave the hatchery, like I said, that's located in Janesville, Wisconsin, which is located around in this neck of the woods. The delivery truck will then travel north across the US, where they'll actually cross the border at Pembina, North Dakota, into Manitoba. So around there. Then they'll continue into Alberta and into Canada, and they'll travel west through Saskatchewan, and then finally they'll arrive into southern Alberta. And then that's where we'll meet the delivery truck from McFarland's, and then the chicks are then transferred and then delivered by ACA staff into the vans into meeting you guys at central locations for you guys to pick up your birds. And then obviously, even though the journey is long, interesting fact is chicks can survive up to 3 days after hatching without food or water, because they're able to actually get a lot of the water and nutrients from absorbing their yolk sac. And then just because of that, they can travel for a good amount of time. But despite that, and even though McFarland's doesn't provide chicks water and feed before they are shipped, they do typically give them a vitamin called N-Man to assist with them traveling that great distance. So as already mentioned, your chicks obviously will be arriving next week, which is obviously exciting. So just as a reminder, the delivery locations kind of for the southern part of the province is, I think, Brooks at Jepson Petroleum, and then Lethbridge at the U of A Farm and Ranch. And then McFarland's will be meeting, going to Dunmore at the co-op there. And then for the northern pickup locations, it will be Red Deer at the U of A, and then Sherwood Park at our ACA office there. And then just the reason why the stops are limited is because we want to complete the distribution as quickly as possible in order to get the chicks transported to you guys' homes as quickly as possible, so you guys can give them food and water in a timely manner. And then just some other information. The chicks are delivered from McFarland's in boxes of about 100 chicks to a box, as shown on the photo on the left. So just as a reminder, if you didn't order in multiples of 100, so as an example, if you didn't order 100 hens or 100 roosters, just please bring a box to transport your birds home in. And then just as a reference to judge the size of the box, McFarland's boxes are around 24 inches by 19 inches by 8 inches in size. And like I said, that holds 100 chicks. So I'll just give you a rough idea of the box that you'll need. So it doesn't need to be overly large, but don't bring a shoe box if you have like 75 birds or something. Bring maybe something a little bit bigger than that. And then obviously, as you guys are enrolled in this project, you are aware that you're responsible for the care and daily needs of your pheasants, including the cost in building the facilities, as well as feed and water. So as you guys know, you'll need a brooder house for when your chicks first arrive, a flight pen for when they get a little bit older, as well as waterers and feed. So we suggest that when you first arrive home with your chicks, that you take them out of their boxes, dip their beaks into warm water, and then put them under the heat lamp with close access to feed and water. And then another tip that I heard just recently is you might want to boil some eggs beforehand, and then when you get your chicks home, just warm up those eggs slightly, break them up, and then give them to the chicks, as this is a good source of protein for when they first arrive home. So good boost to their system there. As you guys probably likely know that most of the losses, early losses occur because the chicks don't start to eat and drink. So the sooner that you guys can get them eating and drinking, the better. And then obviously, as you guys may know, the first couple of weeks kind of are critical, as chicks are fragile, especially since they can't regulate their temperature yet.
One question, Amanda, in the chat was just chicken eggs, they asked?
Yes, I believe it's chicken eggs. Yeah, funny enough, we have some growers that are raising pheasants for us up north. And when I was talking to my coworker last week, he gave me that tip that one of the growers that they use eggs in, and yeah, he indicated that it was chicken eggs. So you might want to give that a try and see if it works out for you guys. But yeah, the eggs are a good source of protein, and I think that's kind of where the tip from that grower came from, is just boosting the level of protein into the chicks is a good boost. And then I guess one last thing is because obviously your chicks are kind of fragile for that first few weeks, we suggest that you check on them regularly, especially at night. And hopefully the temperatures get warmer for next week, but especially at night. But chicks can often die when they pile up from being too cold, so it's good to kind of check on them if you can during that first week or so when they're pretty susceptible. And then as you guys probably are aware and have possibly your brooder house already ready, or you're getting it ready, it should be in a building that is weather tight, free from drafts. It should be rodent and predator proof. So examples can be, a shed, a barn, a garage, one of those small kid pools. Some people have used old watermelon containers inside your house. I'd say whatever works, be creative. And this is where I would say, talk with each other as to what ideas have worked for you guys or what you guys could use. In addition to the actual brooder house, you might want to add some enrichment materials into your pen. It just keeps the birds busy and distracted. So perhaps you want to throw in some spruce bales as shown in the photo, or what other materials that you have at hand at disposal in your hand at your home, or something along those lines. And then just some more information about the brooder house. As I may have mentioned, you may want to avoid corners just to prevent stacking. So like I said, oftentimes chicks will pile up on top of one another in the corner, which leads to smothering those on the bottom. So a suggestion could be is to use cardboard just to make it circular and reduce those corners. And as you guys may be well aware, pheasants tend to be cannibalistic, so we suggest you try not to overcrowd them, and we suggest that chicks require about a minimum of 3/4 of a square foot per pheasant. Other things that you may want to consider in your brooder house is we suggest having at least one 250 watt infrared bulb for about every 100 chicks. And we suggest that the bulbs with the red end are not as bright as the regular light bulbs, and they can help control the pecking and cannibalism that pheasants are more inclined to have, as well as the regular light bulbs don't seem to provide constant heat. So you might want to go with that, the red end of the bulb. Other suggestions is you might want to have a thermometer in the pen around floor height, just because you want to keep an eye on the temperature. And we suggest, maintaining maybe about a temperature of 35 degrees, especially around that first week there. Other suggestions could include include something on the floor of your brooder house. So perhaps you may want to use chopped straw for the floor. If you do happen to use wood shavings, we suggest that you ensure that they're about thumb size or larger. Pheasants may ingest the wood shavings if they're too small, and then they could possibly die from getting an impacted gizzard. So that's why we suggest something about thumb size or larger. Maybe other suggestions you could use is like a brooder type paper or like a coarse rough paper that allows the chicks to keep their footing. Could be another suggestion for the floor. We just suggest that you don't use something slippery such as newspaper, so the chicks will lose their footing. So again, I would suggest chatting with each other to see what has worked for you guys in the past, what hasn't worked, as you guys will kind of have the tips and tricks, so to speak, as to what works and what doesn't. And then just skipping ahead again to some more brooder information, specifically the heat lamp. So in regards to the height of the heat lamp, chicks should form kind of a circle around the heat lamp. So if you notice that the chicks are bunching up directly under the heat lamp, this might be an indication that it's a little bit cold for them. So we might suggest lowering the lamp, or you could maybe add more bulbs, or just check to see that your brooder house is in fact draft proof. And then on the other end of things, if you find that your chicks are spreading out too far away from the heat lamp and are even starting to pant, this might be an indication that they're actually too hot. So you might want to do the reverse, like turning off one of the bulbs, raising the heat lamp, or maybe even opening a window if you have that ability to do so, if it's a little warm in there. And then we suggest that as your birds start to grow, maybe around after 3 weeks of age, you may want to consider discontinuing the heat during the day, of course, weather permitting, and turn it on again in the early evening. And then in ideal conditions, by around week 6 or so, the temperature in the brooder house should be similar to the outside temperature, of course, weather dependent, depending how cold it is outside. So the birds will just have an easier transition to outside when you do put them into your flight pen there. And then I don't know the setup of your brooder pen to your flight pen, but if your pen is attached to your brooder house, you might want to let your birds outside during the day when they're maybe around 4 weeks of age, again, weather dependent. But just make sure if you do this, just make sure that the holes in your flight pen are small enough so the birds don't escape. And then just some information regarding some watering. We suggest that you provide at least one gallon water for around every 75 chicks. And then we suggest kind of in the beginning that you put either small rocks around the base of the water, as shown on the photo on the left there, or if you have a narrow lip for your water of less than, I'd say about ½ an inch, just to prevent the chicks from getting stuck in it or drowning, again, for about the first week when they're here. And then we suggest that you should try to clean your waters, ideally every day. And then for feeder space, we suggest using at least 2 feet of feeder space for every about 50 chicks. And then again, like for the first 6 days or so, your feet can just be put on whatever is convenient that you have in your house there, pie plates, paper plates, baking sheets. And then afterwards you can remove them and use your feeders. And then we suggest that your feeders should be moved around twice a week onto fresh, dry ground. And then moving on to your guys' flight pen, we suggest that pheasants are moved to the flight pen around 6 weeks of age. Again, weather dependent. And then We also suggest that when you do move them to your flight pen, that you don't move them back to the brooder house, just as this may lead to like some feather pecking or some poor development. And then we also suggest that obviously when you do move them out to the flight pen, I know it's hard to predict weather, but try to move them out when it looks like the weather will be reasonably good for a couple days, just to make that transition from the brooder house to the flight pen a little bit easier. So there's some other things that you could do is you could maybe place your feed underneath the shelters for the first week or so. Just again, it'll just make that transition a little bit easier from outside to inside, as well as allow them to get out of the cold a little bit easier. And then for the flight pen, we suggest the more space, the better, just because, as I mentioned, they are cannibalistic. So we suggest a minimum of 25 square feet if you're using beak bits, but ideally the more the better. 40 square feet would be better. Even if you're using beak bits, and if you're not using beak bits, we suggest a minimum of 40 square feet as well, just to deter aggression. And then just some more information on the flight pen. Obviously, this is one of your greatest expenses. So I would suspect it's probably important to build a pen that will not only keep the birds in, the predators out, but maybe it doesn't need to be rebuilt in the future. So some considerations that you might want to consider is obviously the cost of the structure. It'll also obviously vary depending on the materials that you use, how long you anticipate the pen will last, how easy it will construct, etc. So obviously there's lots of different ways to construct your flight pen, but maybe some considerations could be putting up posts every 10 to 12 feet apart from one another, just to maintain the integrity of the pen. For your guys' side wire, maybe you can use, a 1-inch mesh poultry netting, and then maybe for the top of your net, a 2-inch for the top there. And then obviously with your netting, just be aware that the durability of the netting can obviously vary, and obviously the cost associated with that. So again, I suggest chatting with each other to see what you guys have used or suggest on using for your flight netting. Some places that you can look into if you need to purchase netting could be from 3T Products. They're out in the US. However, Pacific Netting Products, again, that's a US product. Smart Net Systems, Berry Hill Limited, that one's in Ontario. Heck, you could even look at Amazon, or again, like I said, I suggest you guys chat with each other and see what you guys have used and where you've gotten it. And then I'm guessing that most of your guys' birds may be out of their pens by fall. And if that's the case and you have the ability to do so and you want to do it, you might want to consider just lowering your top netting in the winter. Just it will help prevent the wear and tear on it. And then just again, some more information on your guys' flight pen. Obviously, there's several predators to pheasants. This can include foxes, coyotes, dogs, skunks, raccoons, hawks, owls, just to name a few. So some suggestions to deter predators could include, trying to bury that side wire into the ground and try to bury it with a right angle that's bent away from the base of the pen. And this will just help prevent the predators from digging into your pen. Another suggestion is if you have electric fencing available, you might want to put that up around the outside perimeter of your flight pen. Other considerations could be putting up a guard board that's shown in the photo on the right there, just to keep predators out. Another benefit to a guard board though is that, as you guys may know, pheasants can be kind of flighty. So if you have this board up along the perimeter of your flight pen, it can also help pheasants not to see people or animals moving around. And then they'll have a tendency to settle down and kind of use the entire pen instead of staying more in the middle where they feel protected. Another benefit to guard boards could be is they could protect the birds from drafts. So that could be another benefit. And then just another consideration is just thinking about the logistics of your flight pen. If you think your birds can escape out the door in which you come in and out of, example, if you think it may blow open, a simple consideration is just put a rock just so that the wind doesn't blow it open, because I know has happened to people in the past, and it is just definitely disappointing when you come back to check on your birds and the flight pen door is blown open because of the wind. And then just moving on kind of to the structure of your guys' flight pen. Obviously, this is important. As I've mentioned previously, pheasants can be cannibalistic, so it's important to have a large enough space to lower that aggression. So one thing that you can do is try to provide numerous obstacles and roosting areas within your pen. So these could be things like pallets, bales, shrubs, tree branches, tall vegetation. Benefits the tall vegetation also allows pheasants to get out of the wind, rain, sun, and it breaks up those sight lines to lower the aggression. So any obstacles that you can put in there is a benefit. Other things you could do is even throwing out an old tarp and draping it over the top netting. This will just allow the birds to have a place to get out of the rain, especially during that transition period when you're moving them from your brooder house to the flight pen. So that could be a benefit to your pheasants as well. And then obviously there's many ways that you guys can design and provide structure to the flight pen. So I guess the main message here is be creative, and again, talk to one another for ideas. So just some examples. So if you look on kind of the pen on the right, you'll see that this person took advantage of using pallets and hay bales as cover and obstacles. Whereas if you look at the pen on the left, they're also taking advantage of hay bales. They even have some old, I think, set design materials from a play. And then if you look at the pen in the middle, they're taking advantage of what's on their property. So they're taking advantage of some shrubs and trees. So again, be creative, chat with one another, and use the resources that you have on hand. And then for your flight pen, we suggest that you provide at least 2 9-liter waterers for about every 100 chicks. And then we also suggest that you provide at least 4 about half a meter feeders for about 100 chicks. And then we suggest that the waterers be cleaned about every 2 to 4 days, and the feeders be moved twice a week onto fresh, dry ground. And then, as I mentioned previously, we suggest that you might want to place the feeders under the shelter for about the first week that the birds are outside. And then just as I guess a little bit of a tip, if you look at the arrow that just came up, when water is kind of left out on the ground, it can get muddy and dirty. And if the weather is a little bit cooler outside, it could even freeze. So one suggestion is to have it on a pallet that has been cut to size, or something like that is shown here, just to keep it off the ground. Just talking a little bit about feed. Obviously, high quality feed and good nutrition is critical to raising healthy pheasants. So for proper feed, proper feed will promote Healthy feather growth will also help with the ability to retain feathers, and as well as it enhances regrowth of feathers from pecking. So when you first get your birds, we suggest that you use turkey starter or something similar until your pheasants are about 6 weeks of age. So turkey starter has about 25 to 28% protein. So the higher the protein, the better, especially when the pheasants are young, so about to 6 weeks of age. And then from 6 weeks onward, we suggest that you can switch to slightly lower of a protein level, about 22 to 23%. So maybe using something like turkey grower until about the pheasants are about 11 weeks of age. And then after 11 weeks of age, if you want, you can start adding some milled grains to the turkey grower. But again, we suggest that you maintain at least 23% in that feed. And then around 14 weeks of age, feel free to introduce some whole grains, but we again suggest that you try to maintain at least 23% protein in their feed. And then throughout the season, if you notice that your birds are showing signs of pecking, one thing you can do is increase the protein levels to promote that feather growth. So for beak bits or blinders, so we suggest using an anti-pecking device, such as the blinder that's shown on the photo on the left, or a beak bit that's shown on the photo on the right. These will help deter aggression. As I mentioned previously, pheasants can be cannibalistic. So we suggest actually using beak bits, and that's what we will supply for anyone who's interested, versus blinders. As in the past, we've had growers who have used blinders, and some of their pheasants actually got caught in the top netting and died. So that's why we've moved away from using blinders. We also suggest beak bits, because if you look at the photo shown, you can kind of see that beak bits allow the pheasants to still see directly in front of them, as opposed to blinders. So again, we encourage everyone to use beak bits if you're interested, and we will provide them to anyone who is interested. So just let us know and we're happy to supply them to you. And then for beak bits, we suggest that you put them on around 5 to 6 weeks of age, and we suggest that you continue to use them until you release them or sell them. So here's just an example of beak bits versus no beak bits and the benefit of using them. So if you look at the photo on the left, it shows a pheasant approximately 5.5 weeks old. And as you can see, the pheasant is in good overall condition. It has a tail and no signs of feather pecking. So this was in a pen with pheasants that had beak bits. Whereas if you look at the photo on the right, again, it's still a 5.5 week old pheasant, but you can see that it's in a little bit poorer condition than the other pheasant on the left, as it has kind of a little bit of a bare back, some bare spots due to feather pecking, and is lacking a tail. So this pheasant was in a pen with no beak bits. So again, I just encourage you to use beak bits as just another tool to help prevent feather pecking. And just one final note, I would also say always be look out for cannibalism, and obviously just don't expect it to go away. Instead, it'll just get worse. So just keep an eye on your pheasants in your pen there. And then just to kind of help encourage and provide feedback, just to ensure everyone is successful in raising good quality birds, we're asking members to complete a mid-project progress reports, as well as a final evaluation. And basically, in a nutshell, the mid-progress report is basically just an opportunity to invite different members, to visit your pen either in person or virtually, just to provide suggestions for possible improvement. And I think that the midpoint is a good time to do this, because if there's any suggestions that could be made, it still allows you some sufficient time to make any changes that may be required in order to further the health, growth, or development of your birds, and still achieve, a nice looking bird at the end of your project. So some things that you could look for that may indicate a good quality bird could include reasonable weight, fully feathered backs, so that would mean no missing or damaged feathers, as well as no evidence of open wounds or blood on their back, as well as 2 tail feathers evident. So for males, this would mean, having a tail at least 12 inches in length at maturity. And then I guess in summary, just to kind of summarize some of the key points that we chatted about tonight, it's avoid overcrowding. Again, pheasants are cannibalistic and require space. Provide sufficient feeders and waterers. It's important to have pheasants have access to water and feed, and that it's clean. We suggest that you provide high quality feed. As an example, if pheasants lose their tails, it takes approximately 8 to 10 weeks to grow back. So upping the protein and giving them more space can aid in that growth. We also suggest providing numerous obstacles in roosting areas. So the more things that you have in your flight pen as a distraction, the better, as there'll be less pecking on each other. Again, use beak bits to help mitigate feather pecking. But again, if you use beak bits, which we encourage you to do so, just make sure you remove them before you release them or sell your birds. And I guess that's all I had to say. So big thanks to obviously 4-H Alberta, as well as McFarland Pheasants, who we get our chicks through, and ConocoPhillips has also supported our project as well. So thanks to everyone for coming out tonight. I don't know if anyone had any questions, or you guys had a chance to maybe chat with one another on key ideas or good ideas that you guys had, but I would encourage you to do so now or moving forward.
Does anybody have any questions? Quiet bunch tonight, I guess. Oh, they seem like they're a quiet bunch.
That's all right. Maybe they're just absorbing some of the information. And like I said, I just encourage you guys to chat with one another. Feel free to chat with Tracy or myself.